Diver CEO, if people don't know, is a podcast hosted by Stephen Bartlett, who has done very well for himself as a young business entrepreneur, has kind of grown quite rapidly through his 20s. There's lots of companies, lots of money, and he decided to get into the podcast world. I believe that his motivations are good. He has recently, particularly over the last 6 months, he gets very, very big guests on, but recently he seems to be really leaning into the whole nutrition, health side of things and bringing people on who are giving health advice. But what I started to notice as a trend where, one, they always had an outrageous claim, and two, they always had a book or a course to sell off the back of an outrageous claim. That's a red flag for me straight away. I'm not saying that, like, because you have something to sell, I have something to sell. I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world. However, outrageous claim plus Stephen Bartlett plus something to sell is now a big trigger for me. So, don't know the guy, nothing against him personally, but a lot of people I know put a lot of weight on what comes out of that show. And his production is excellent, and his clips are huge, and his guests are massive. So, do you want to give me your, first of all, just your overall opinion on the podcast and that type of information, that type of platform? And then we might dig a little bit deeper into the information.
Yeah. So it is problematic, as you described there. He has huge reach. And this is a problem with Joe Rogan as well. You know, the problem is not just Steve, right? It's Joe Rogan as well. I love Joe. Like, everything that Joe does, like the comedy, the UFC, the podcast, it's fantastic. I love it. But at the end of the day, like, you know, he's had a lot of bullshit over the years in terms of guests, like even RFK. We'll not get into that because that's not my wheelhouse. When you get Gary on, potentially, you can talk to him about that. But yeah, coming back to the diary of a CEO, like, I think it is problematic because huge reach, obviously he has a lot of financial resources and power to like plug into this, and obviously that produces more growth and stuff like that. But yeah, like, I think the problem lies in him getting these guests on, as we say, that, as you described, they have these philosophies and a belief system around nutrition that is contrary to the current breadth and depth of evidence in the nutrition field, especially things like nutrition epidemiology. You know, we can pull a lot from that. But these guys and girls come on and they'll have some sort of quirky thing, whether it's like, you know, blood glucose monitoring, if it's like the glucose goddess, or if it's you had like an alternative medicine health practitioner on, she was talking about fasting and all of this kind of stuff. Yeah. And then the guy's name is actually, I've missed his name now. What's his name? Is Tim something? I should know his name.
James might be able to help us out here. He might be able to jump in at some point. But.
Yeah. What is it?
Your man Tim, the biohacker?
Yes. What is his name? That's
Gray,
wild. What was it, James?
It might be Tim Gray.
No. Anyway,
we'll find it.
We'll find it. But one of his recent guests that was talking about, you know, that don't worry about calories for weight loss and stuff like that. I'm sure that his name will come back to me at some stage. But essentially, it's just these claims that are contrary to what has been established in the nutrition literature. And then obviously Stephen has this huge platform and he's able to spread this message like a virus in a sense, you know.
This podcast just got flagged on Spotify.
But yeah, so it's kind of like, it's this mad spreading of misinformation. And again, this, as I was saying earlier, as it relates to, like, say, people jumping on carnivore diets and stuff like that, it is essentially ingraining beliefs that are unhelpful or potentially dysfunctional in the wider population. So calories don't matter. I need to freak out every time I eat fruit because blood glucose spikes. Fasting is going to increase my testosterone, so I need to just not eat, which is like, when you think about it logically, it's like...
Was it 1,700% or 17,000%?
1,300% or something like that. Yeah. Like, it's, you know, it's which is an outrageous claim. Like, it's quite easy to sort of, like, when you actually understand even just basic testosterone levels and even what happens whenever you use like pharmacological interventions with testosterone, it's like, that is an outrageous claim to make, that fasting would increase by that much. But again, it's ingraining these beliefs in people that are unhelpful, and then they'll carry those beliefs forward, you know. So, and this, you can pull this back even to whenever I'm dealing with a client that has, say, disordered eating patterns. They have been conditioned over many, many years through things like, you know, maybe their mother's experiences with like slimming clubs, magazines, celebrities promoting bullshit diets and supplements. And the social media machine with like the Diary of a CEO and the sort of the quote unquote nutrition experts that he gets on, feeds into this unhelpful cycle of beliefs around nutrition that don't help people. Like at best, they don't help people. At worst, they can have pretty substantial negative health consequences. Again, I keep coming back to the carnivore diet because I think it is such a good example of, adopting the carnivore diet and then along the chain of command can end in someone having a cardiovascular event whenever they're 40 or 50. So again, this is kind of where the problem lies. It seems innocuous. It seems like it's, not a major issue for say, for example, Stephen to get some of these guys on that are talking about whatever sort of bullshit claim that they're making. But when you actually bring it down to the individual that's consuming the piece of information and then how they carry that piece of information forward, it's real problematic. And it kind of comes back to what you were saying earlier about this huge amount of information that we have access to. There's a quote, "We are drowning in information but starved for knowledge and wisdom."
Yeah, yeah.